Okay, good evening and welcome to the Suffolk Town Granville Regional School Committee meeting on May 4th at 5:30 p.m. This evening, if you would like to make a public comment to the school board, please send an email to the superintendent at stgrsd.org email address. Please make sure you include your name and address in the body of the email. Okay, up first, should be a secretary's report in your packets dated April 13th, 2021. I'll entertain a motion to accept those meeting minutes.
So move.
Oh, thanks.
Is there a second?
I second that motion.
Okay. All right, anybody have any questions or comments or need changes on the meeting minutes? Okay, hearing none, we're going to do a roll call vote. Chelsea?
Yes.
Ted?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Maria?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
And Jeff is a yes. Okay, warrants. An email just came out just before this meeting started, so please take a look at the warrants, sign them, and return them at your earliest convenience. Correspondence this evening?
Director of Finance and Operations, Stephen Presnall, has two things he'd like to present tonight.
Thank you, Superintendent. Just wanted to make the committee aware of the funding commitment decision letter we received from the Universal Service Administrative Company or Corporation. It's basically the entity that runs the federal E-rate program. Every year we participate in the E-rate program, which provides funding to schools and libraries for primarily it's around technology right now and access to the internet. So there are two different categories of funding that you can receive from the E-rate program. Category one, which is what this funding commitment decision letter applies to. And that in the case of school districts, essentially it's really just for internet access. I didn't know how much the committee was aware of the E-rate program, so I wanted to share this with you. The district has its internet service provider is Crocker Communications. We get 60% funding of the internet connection services fee, which is $28,800 from the E-rate program, and those credits are applied directly to the bills. So we did apply again this year for Category 2 funding, and we're awaiting the award for that. And we anticipate receiving everything we're looking for, and that will help finance the upgrade to our fiber network that was started last year. So we completed phase one last summer. This summer, we're planning to complete the project with a second phase, relying on approval from the E-rate program for those Category 2 services. And then the other item that I had was we received some great news initially from the USDA, the Department of Agriculture, and also then from Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed, the state folks, the Child Nutrition Program, that the USDA is extending the free lunch program through the end of the upcoming school year. So the 2021-22 school year, they will continue their blanket free lunch program for all students. So no eligibility no eligibility test in terms of income, which is great news for districts across the country, and as well as right here in Southwick Falls and Granville. So we're awaiting additional details and guidance from DESE, which is the administrative arm of the USDA for education nutrition programs here in Massachusetts. And we'll share that with the committee when we receive that. But based on the information that USDA and DESE have shared thus far, can look forward to another year of full reimbursement and free meals to all students.
Okay, any questions?
So this is Pam. I just had a question, and I don't know if you have the answer to this, Steve, but have we seen an increase in participation in our meals and our food service program since it has been free of charge?
That's a tough question to answer, Pam, because there's nothing really to compare it to. We have students who are obviously, we have reduced enrollment, number one. Number two, of those students who are enrolled, some students are remote entirely. Some have been hybrid in 2 days off 3 or home for 3. I can tell you that overall, the revenue is down slightly, but we have also done things to control our costs. And so we're looking at a close to break even year from a revenue versus expense, too close to call at this point in time, but which is an improvement over prior years, but still it's
yeah, it would seem to me there'd just be a lot of variables involved, but just thought I'd ask. Thank you.
Yeah, I can get you a percentage at an upcoming meeting in terms of participation, but it's certainly not an apples to apples measure. Some of the extreme things that we've been doing with respect to serving, 5-day meal kits and curbside pickups and service in the classroom and breakfast. I mean, but it's to a varying number of students from week to week and month to month. So it's been all over the map, but we'll try to get you a participation percentage.
Okay, thank you.
Just that I don't know that it can be judged against anything we've done previously because of the unique nature of the 2021 school year.
Any other questions for Mr. Presnall? Okay, it's time for our first public comment. I will ask Amy to check the email account.
Chairman Houle, there are no emails for public comment.
Okay. On to student advisory report.
Good evening, everyone. The report for tonight includes next week, 10th and 11th graders will be taking the MCAS. There are 22 11th graders taking it. It was optional this year with hopes for scholarships from advanced placement on the test. This week is Spirit Week at SRS. Monday was America Monday. Today was Taurus Tuesday. Tomorrow is Gym Class Hero Day. Thursday is Pajama Day. And Friday is Class Unity Day. Along with Spirit Week, this week is Teacher Appreciation Week. Halls have been decorated with posters and balloons thanking teachers for all their hard work. On Thursday at SRS, there will be coffee and donuts for the teachers. All week there are discounts for teachers from businesses all over town. At Miss Murphy's, teachers can get $5 off their entire purchase from Thursday to Sunday. Coward's Farm is offering 10% off their entire purchase from Monday through Friday. Blossoming Anchors and Kettlebread is offering 10% of the entire purchase from Monday to Sunday. The Summer House is also offering 30% off the entire purchase from Monday to Sunday. This Thursday, May 6th, this is the Spring Awards ceremony. Junior Book Awards will be given out. The 5 finalists for the Atkinson Striving for Excellence Scholarship had interviews today. The finalists are Grace Kuhn, Katie Turcotte, Aiden Jubb, Jaden Wilson, and Olivia Glynn. The winner will be announced at the Spring Awards ceremony. The National Honor Society new member induction will also take place during this ceremony. AP tests for high school students begin next week for students. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. The Massachusetts Health Council and Massachusetts Association for Mental Health are teaming up with an opportunity for students to express themselves creatively while raising awareness about mental health. It is an expression contest through grades 7 through 12 with the deadline of May 14th. More information was emailed to students from the guidance department. Senior week plans have been finalized and they'll be sent out by mail to families. Friday, June 4th is senior checkout at the bus loop from 8 to 10 a.m. The senior parade will be at 4 on the same day. Monday, June 7th is the senior class trip. It will be at Wally Park from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. There will be a barbecue, malicious ice cream truck, and outdoor games. Tuesday, June 8th is the rain date for this event. Wednesday, June 9th is the award ceremony. It will be under the tents at the SRS Fields at 5:30. Scholarships and awards will be given out. Graduation rehearsal is on Thursday, June 10th at 10 a.m. in the SRS student parking lot. Prom is also on this day. It will be at Roma Restaurant from 6 to 9 p.m. It's an SRS senior only event with dinner and games. Saturday, June 12th is the day scheduled for graduation. Friday, June 11th is the rain date. Graduation on June 12th will take place under the tents at the SRS Fields at 10 a.m. Each student is allowed 6 guests for the ceremony. And that concludes tonight's student advisory report. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any questions for the students before we move on? Hearing none, we're going to move on to the educational presentation section. This evening, we're going to listen to the FY20 financial report by Powers and Sullivan. Steve, if you wouldn't mind giving a brief introduction.
Sure thing, Mr. Chairman. On an annual basis, the district is required to have its financial statements audited by a certified professional accountant, certified public accountant, accounting firm. The district since 2011 has been with has had Powers and Sullivan as its auditor. Recently, Rich Sullivan, who some of the committee members were familiar with, he was one of the founding partners for Powers and Sullivan, moved on, so he's retired. We're sad to see Rich go, but happy for him at the same time. Frank Soretti has replaced Rich in that role and overseeing the Southwick Tolland Granville Regional School District audit. He's joined this evening by Elizabeth Stevens, who does most of the field work here for Powers and Sullivan. The services that they perform, very valuable, helps to verify the information that, the status of our financial position. We rely on them for counsel on various items in terms of how to present things on our financials, as well as internal control suggestions. They also help us comply with the federal requirement based on the amount of federal funds that we receive. We're obligated to have an audit of our federal financial programs, and they perform that service as well, along with some other services. So I'll turn it over to Frank and Elizabeth, and they've got a presentation for you this evening.
Hi, can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you, Steve. We appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight to present the results of the 2020 audit. I'd also like to start off by thanking the superintendent Director of Finance and Operations, District Accountant, District Treasurer, and the rest of the finance team for the cooperation and assistance that we received throughout the course of the audit. This year was a very different year for us as a firm from an audit standpoint. There were a lot of question marks around the time that we were doing our field work about whether or not we'd be working remotely or if we'd be able to come out to your site. And after conversations with your team, they had set aside a nice room for us that was socially distanced and were comfortable with us coming out. And so that's what we did. So the majority of the work was done in the same manner that we've done it in the past. We were able to come out, talk to staff, and talk to the team, get the documentation that we needed. And then there was some work that was done remotely, but for the most part, I would say that the audit went very efficiently, and we really didn't notice much of a difference as a result of COVID, just because we were able to be out there and get the information that we needed. So we appreciated that. That was really great. We have a big checklist of information that we request before we come out, and it really helps us to be able to have that information readily available when we get there. If the books are closed and all the closing entries are made and the accruals are booked and everything else that goes into the financial statements. And what we found was that we got a very good package, that the information was readily available for us when we got there. In fact, we received a significant amount of the information before we even got on site to do the work, which is really helpful to us too, because we can get a head start and really hit the ground running when we get there. So that was also very much appreciated. The principal objective of our work, which I think Steve kind of mentioned, is the expression of an opinion on the district's financial statements. And we perform the audit in accordance with auditing standards generally accepted in the United States of America and government auditing standards issued by the Comptroller General of the United States. We're responsible for planning and performing the audit to obtain reasonable but not absolute assurance that the financial statements are free of material misstatement, are fairly presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And management's primary responsibility is the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements, also providing us with the information that we need to be able to complete the audit. And the next two slides, or actually a couple of slides in, talk more about these responsibilities in detail. And so we'll hold off on that for now. If you want to go to the next slide here. We meet with the district staff. This is slide number 3. We meet with the district staff to gain an understanding of the processes and procedures and the internal controls that are in place. We design our audit tests based on those controls. We test a significant amount of transactions in the revenue cycle, the payables, payroll, journal entries. And what we found when we tested those transactions is that the transactions were being processed in accordance with what your policies and procedures are and the controls that are in place. We found that transactions were properly approved and signed off. There was proper supporting documentation, and the transactions were reported correctly on the ledger. So we didn't have any concerns or findings related to any of that testing that we did. We also looked very closely at cash. Cash is always one of the biggest risk areas in the audit for us. One of the most important controls over cash is timely and accurate bank reconciliations. And what we found is that the district is reconciling its bank accounts on a monthly basis, and that the bank reconciliations were complete and accurate. And so that is great to see. That's a really important control, as I mentioned. We also look at test the different items that you see on the financial statements, the assets, the liabilities. The most significant assets you have are the cash and the capital assets, the liabilities, the other post-employment benefit liability and your pension benefit liability, as well as your long-term debt or your most significant liabilities. But based on all of our audit work and the results that we had were that we were able to issue an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. Means that your financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. That's the best opinion that you can get. And we didn't have to propose any adjustments to correct any balances on the ledger. So we found that the books and records were in very good shape. The balances were accurate. And the only work that we helped with was some of the compiling of the financial statements and the conversion from your budgetary basis of accounting to the GAAP basis of accounting, which is pretty standard for all the clients that we audit. We help out with that. That's a service that's provided. Information that we received was accurate. Questions that we asked were answered on a timely basis, and we got good answers to our questions. And so that's really, from our standpoint, very good results, and it was a very smooth audit. And as I said, the next two slides talk about management's responsibilities and the auditor's responsibilities. And for the sake of time, I'd just like to skip over those pages and go right to page 6. And page 6 starts with some financial highlights. And if you want, looking at the financial statements, you can see these balances on page 14. This is the general fund balance. And so the fund balance totaled $2.1 million. $121,000 of that was committed for capital stabilization. $824,000 of fund balance was assigned. Of that, $24,000 relates to encumbrances. And then another $800,000 of excess and deficiency was voted to fund the 2021 budget. And that left you with unassigned fund balance of $1.1 million, which was about $100,000 less than the prior year. So pretty consistent there. The next slide is general fund operations. So these are your budgetary basis operations. And you could see these on page 49 of the financial statements. And your general fund operations resulted in a $121,000 increase in fund balance. That increase is mainly due to revenue, your revenues exceeding the budget by $121,000. And that's mainly due to your E-rate reimbursement. You also had your expenditures were $611,000 under budget. And you also received $254,000 of proceeds from the sale of school buses to the Lower Pioneer Valley Education Collaborative. And all those increases are offset by the use of $739,000 of excess and deficiency that was voted to fund the 2020 budget, and also $148,000 of reserves that we used to fund the prior year encumbrances. That's really the, what makes up that net increase of $121,000 there. But overall, you have good, strong budgetary controls in place, and your budget is structurally sound from what we are seeing. Next slide talks about excess and deficiency, and it's subject to Department of Revenue review and approval. Can be appropriated for any valid purpose through the budget process. And your excess and deficiency was certified at $998,000. And that's a $150,000 increase from the prior year. The statutes allow a district to maintain a balance not to exceed 5% of the next year's budget. And that if it does exceed, then you have to return any excess to member communities. Based on our calculations, it doesn't appear that you did exceed that 5%. Next slide relates to the pension and OPEB liabilities. The OPEB liability, if you wanted to see that, you can see it on page 55 of the financial statements. And the liability totaled $33.1 million as of June 30th, 2020. That was an increase of $6.1 million from the prior year. And $5.2 million of that increase relates to changes of assumptions. The biggest change that had the biggest impact was the change in the discount rate from 3.5% down to 2.21%. And that is because the funds in your OPEB trust fund are not sufficient to fully fund your benefit payments. And so you're required to use a AA municipal bond rate. And so your discount rate, until you build up enough money in your trust fund, is going to follow the AA municipal bond rate, which is that 2.21%. And that was based on the bond buyer 20-year municipal index. As you build up money in the fund, you at some point will qualify for what they call a blended rate, which is the difference between the municipal bond rate that you see here and your long-term expected rate of return. And that's based on how you have the assets invested. And the discount rate does have a very big impact on the OPEB liability. The lower it is, the higher your liability is going to be. For pensions, the teachers and certain administrators are part of the Mass Teachers Retirement System, and this can be seen on page 53. There's a table there. for their pension liability, and that is funded by the Commonwealth. The portion of the liability associated with the district that's with the Commonwealth is about $41 million. And the Commonwealth contributed about $5 million on behalf of the district for fiscal 2020. And on page 51, teachers or other school employees that are not part of the Mass Teachers Retirement System can enroll in the Hampden County Regional Retirement System. And the net pension liability associated with that retirement system is $13.2 million, which was a $300,000 increase from the prior year. And the discount rate there was reduced from 7.5% to 7.15%. And again, that would cause the liability to go up. The Hampden retirement system was 50% funded as of 12/31/19. And that was an increase of 3% from the prior year. So they made a little progress from a funding standpoint. The next slide relates to the audited federal awards. And it's, as Steve had mentioned, for entities that receive and expend federal funds, the federal government requires entities that expend more than $750,000 in a fiscal year to have what they call a single audit. And it's an audit of the federal awards. The district expended $1 million. $236,000 was for child nutrition, $434,000 for special education, $71,000 for coronavirus relief, and $304,000 for other educational purposes. We tested the special education cluster as a major program, and we were able to issue an unmodified opinion on compliance. We didn't find any issues with compliance related to that program. We also didn't find any deficiencies in internal controls related to our work, and there were no findings or question costs that were reported associated with that program. So this is another clean audit. You can't have better results than what you had there. And that's really, what I think is important to know about that. And that takes us to the management letter, which is the third document that you should have there. And there was one new comment in there, and I consider it to be, more of a housekeeping comment. It was related to some deficit balances in some old special revenue accounts. However, there are also positive balances related to those accounts. And it's really just when you get new grants in, you have to start coding your revenues and expenditures to your new accounts when you set those up each fiscal year. And sometimes that change in coding, and it looks like this happened in the past, doesn't get changed over quickly enough. And so you might have some revenues related to your new grant and your new fund, and maybe you've got some of your expenditures in the old fund, but when you net them together, they net out to zero. And that's really what the situation is here. And it's really just making some entries to clean up those old balances, consolidating the positives and the negatives, and getting rid of those. And there might be some other small little deficits in there that may need to be funded. But overall, the grants were being maintained very well. It was just these old balances that we saw that we thought it would be good to get those cleaned up. On the prior year comments, there was a comment related to school lunch deficit. That deficit was funded in 2020. And I believe that there were also some other changes to try to address some structural issues, like staff reductions, menu consolidation, and alternative supply contracts. However, with COVID, you haven't really had a full year's full student population to really determine if these changes have solved the problem or not. So hopefully that will be the case next year. Everybody will be back to school, but some changes have been made, and so hopefully the issue has been resolved, but I think there's still a little follow-up that's needed there. There was another comment related to adopting a cash and investment policy. And this is just something that the accounting standards have highlighted in the past as something that's important to have a policy for custodial risk, credit risk, and interest rate risk. It just provides the treasurer with guidelines on how the school committee and management, expect the funds to be invested. And then the last one was related to a framework for assessing and improving cybersecurity. So cybersecurity continues to be an issue that is popping up we're seeing it, even within like the last few weeks at some of our clients with the ransomware. And so we've been recommending to all of our clients that they consider, having a third party come in and take a look at your systems and try to give an independent assessment of where there might be some risks in the system, where there might be some vulnerabilities. And then you could make a cost benefit determination to determine, is this something that, makes sense for us to invest more money in to try to tighten things up and make things more secure. It could potentially be done in-house, but having an independent person doing it outside seems to be the way that most of the other communities are going. And I think having that independent set of eyes looking at it can be a good thing. And so that was really everything in my report. I don't know if anybody had any questions or comments. I'm happy to take those if so.
Any questions from the school committee?
Mr. Chairman, this is Mr. Presnell. I have a couple of questions for Frank, if you would indulge me.
Sure.
So, Frank, you mentioned the change to the discount rate on the OPEB liability valuation. How much has to be in the? Do you know how much has to be in the trust fund in order to get to the higher rate?
Yeah, that's probably a better question for your actuary.
Okay.
They're the ones that do that projection of, benefit payments versus what's in the fund, and they could definitely give you a better answer on that than I could.
Yeah. All right. We'll pose that to them. We're just getting started now on the 6/30/20 valuation. So opportunities to chat with them about that. And have you, we've been searching for kind of a good model for a cash and investment policy, really having a difficult time finding other districts that have done anything that's kind of worth mimicking, or at least taking some of their examples. Have you guys come across anything that you've seen with some of your other clients that have been, that you would think is a kind of a model for what regional school districts need to have in place?
Yeah, I could definitely send you something from some other clients. I think that there's a template with the Mass Treasurer Collectors Association.
Okay.
A lot of the policies that we see, I think that that's kind of the starting point, that template. There's a lot of similarities between the different ones. I can take a look and see if I can find that on their website, and I can send you that. And I can also send you something from like another school district too that might be helpful.
That would be great. I think the school district thing is helpful. I've seen the stuff that we've been able to get our hands on thus far. It's been from like a single page document, which was, I felt, kind of inadequate, to a municipal cash and investment policy, which was appeared to be overkill for what our purposes are, or our needs are. So trying to find something in between that covers the things that need to be covered, but doesn't get so wordy that it's something that people don't even really look at or can find their way through. So yeah, if you have some examples, particularly from regional school districts, that would be helpful and appreciated.
Yep, no problem. I have one in mind that I think might be a really good one for you to use.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions this evening in regards to the FY20 audit?
I have one follow-up question, or one other question, if I'm also indulged. Are there is there anything coming down the pike relative to how how we have to carry things on the books, liabilities, assets, any changes that we should be aware of, GASB pronouncements that might be affecting us?
There are two. There's GASB 84, which is for the fiduciary activities. Looks like you just have agency funds and your OPEB trust fund. And so what that's going to do, it's going to change, it's going to get rid of agency funds and it's going to replace them with custodial funds. And so if you were to look at page 18 of the financial statements right now, you would see for the agency funds that all there are is assets and liabilities. It's just a balance sheet. There's no revenues and expenses on page 19 associated with the agency funds. Assets equal liabilities. And so when these change to custodial funds, it's also going to add a revenue and expenditure statement. So you'll see, the balance sheet and the revenues and expenditures, and instead of the assets closing out to liabilities, they're going to close out to the net position. And then we also just need to, we'll work with you to just look and see what you have in those agency funds. I would imagine the majority of it, if not all of it, is student activity funds.
Right.
And then we just have to make a determination on whether those should stay in the custodial funds or whether they should actually be special revenues. But we'll go over that when we're out there, doing our field work. We can have a more detailed discussion about it. And then GASB 87 is related to leases. And so what that's going to do is in the past, we've had operating leases and we've had capital leases. And so this new accounting standard is basically going to say that if it's a lease, it's a capital lease. There's not going to be any more operating leases disclosed in the financial statements.
Really?
Right. And so as long as you have a good list, like an inventory of what leases you have,
yep,
just look through those leases with you. They're going to have to meet like materiality threshold and a few other criteria, but we can kind of walk through those together. If you just have a list of your leases with the details of like what are the required lease payments, what's the term of the lease, that type of lease information.
Sure.
Then we'll be able to make those determinations.
Okay. We don't have much, so it won't be a daunting process.
Okay. But those are the only two things that are really going to have an impact on the 21 financial statements.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for the committee, from the committee?
I want to say thanks, Steve, for asking all those questions. Usually it's me asking questions, but this stuff is way over my head. So I know that we're in good hands with you. Thank you.
Pam, you disappoint me. I was counting on you to come up. I figured if anybody was going to have a good question for the auditors, it was going to be you.
Usually that's me, but when it comes to the ed stuff, oh yeah. When it comes to the money stuff, not so much. I'm trusting you for that, Steve.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on to policies this evening. Tonight we have the third and final reading of two different policies. Up first is policy IGA for curriculum development. We will be voting on this policy later this evening, so this is the last chance to ask questions or make changes. Any questions?
I think just remember we mostly changed this to just reflect the name of who's actually involved in our process that we're using currently. The instructional leadership team process and the district curriculum and instructional team.
Right. Next policy is IGD, which is curriculum adoption. Again, this is our third reading. We'll be voting on this tonight. So any last questions on this one? Okay, hearing none, let's move on. Up next is action items.
Hi, this is Superintendent Jen Willard. Move to approve the revised policy IGA curriculum development recommended.
So moved.
I second.
Okay, any last questions on this policy? Okay, hearing none, we're going to do a roll call vote. Pam?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Ted?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Maria?
Yes.
And Jeff is a yes. Motion passes 7-0-0.
Move to approve the revised policy IGD curriculum adoption recommended.
So moved.
I second.
Any last questions on this policy? Okay, we're going to do a roll call vote. Pam?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Ted?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Maria?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
And Jeff is a yes. Motion passes 7-0-0.
Move to approve the summer learning program coordinator job description recommended.
So moved.
I second.
Any questions on this job description?
My only question is, once it is approved, when do you plan on posting it?
Tomorrow.
All right. Good answer.
Any other questions?
And are you hoping to get somebody from in-house for it?
I think it would work best if we had somebody in-house.
Yeah. Very good.
Okay, we're going to do a roll call vote. Pam?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Ted?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Maria?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
And Jeff is a yes. Motion passes 7-0-0.
Move to approve the 2021 PTO fundraiser, Stars and Stripes Fun Run recommended.
So moved.
I second.
Any questions on this fundraiser?
I think we didn't see the whole thing, but I think Mrs. Jackier wrote about not encouraging spectators, but it seemed kind of like, will they be coming or allowed, or is it just kind of a straightforward no to spectators? It just said not encouraging, I think, if I go back to it, the letter, I guess, or if that's something that
I was gonna say, I don't know if it was allowed. I remember we talked about it at the PTO meeting, but I don't know if it was going to be allowed. Because we haven't really had any visitors on campus before, this year anyway.
Yeah, we will not be encouraging spectators. So I just wanted to make sure if it was like a set thing. That way we can support them in that too. Whether they're not encouraged or really they're not allowed. That's all.
Yeah, I think it's being held during the school day.
Okay, so not allowed, probably, I would assume.
I would assume that too.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, hearing none, we're going to do a roll call vote. Pam, you're up first.
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Ted?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Maria?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
And Jeff is a yes. Motion passes 7-0-0.
Move to approve the 2021 Southwick Regional School National Honor Society fundraiser face mask sales recommended.
So moved.
I second. Was this in our packet?
No, this was a last minute addition.
I was wondering that myself.
I thought I did a good job preparing. Okay. But it sounds good. Does the PTO have any problem with this? Because they did a similar math.
So Amy, correct me if I'm wrong. These are the same masks. And this is a strong connection between the PTO letting the NHS sell what they had left.
Great.
Is that correct, Amy?
Yeah, that's what was communicated to me.
Awesome.
Okay, any other questions on this fundraiser? Okay, hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Pam?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Ted?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Maria?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
And Jeff is a yes. Motion passes 7-0-0. Okay, moving on to reports. Up to first is Superintendent Willard.
Hi, well, I did have a lot to report, but our student representative did a great job reporting out on all the events that are happening up at the regional school in the upcoming weeks. I do want to let the community know that we do have kindergarten registration happening this week at Woodland School. So if you have a child that is of kindergarten or first grade age, please reach out to Woodland School and get in contact with their office. And that is all I have for reports tonight.
Okay, any questions for Superintendent Willard? All right, on to the Director of Finance and Operations, Mr. Presnell.
One thing I wanted to mention to the committee, the Finance Subcommittee met yesterday to talk about some news we received from the Massachusetts legislature regarding the use of ESSER II funds. So it's the some of the grant funds related to COVID relief that are available to school districts across the state. And previously, it was thought, based on the governor's budget proposal for fiscal year 2022, that we would be able to use those funds toward mitigating or eliminating increases to the required local contribution for member municipalities. In our case, $86,000 of our ESSER funding was dedicated to the Southwick assessment. The news from the legislature, the House Ways and Means, and the House took its vote on its House Ways and Means budget last week and decided not to include the use of ESSER II funds to offset increases to local contributions. However, in the absence of any additional guidance from DESE, we're taking a position right now to just sit tight and wait for that guidance. So no change at this point in time, no desire to change anything with respect to the budget that's before the three towns at this time. In the absence of additional information from DESE, you know, if we change something at this point and then there's another change that's offered by the legislature in the final adoption of the state budget, would just be exacerbating the problem, I guess. So, but I did want to make you aware that there was a little wrinkle there, which is different from how we went about adopting our budget for FY22. And this pertains really only to the town of Southwick.
So if we get further information saying that we can't use it, then what happens?
Well, possibly nothing, because it's not a material amount of money relative to our overall budget. And there have been other increases to revenue sources from the state as per the House Ways and Means budget. If the Senate budget aligns with that, those increases more than offset the reduction to the assessment we'd be receiving from Southwick. There may be guidance that's forthcoming from DESE when this is all settled that says, oh no, we have to go back and try to get that funding from the town, in which case the committee would probably be required to take some type of action, which would then be presented to the towns. but it's all speculation at this point, Pam. So we just, until we have some actual guidance as to how we should proceed on this, you know, we're just moving forward with what we have.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions for Mr. Fresnel? Steve, anything else to report on tonight?
That's mostly it. I did just want to mention, in case there are some folks of our staff listening in on tonight's session, our open enrollment period for group health and dental insurance is underway. And Mrs. Grise, who serves as our benefits administrator, will be conducting some Zoom sessions with staff to make them aware of the changes. The new plan that was adopted by the school committee, as well as the health savings account that goes along with that. So we're getting information, or she's been getting the information out to staff. We'll be conducting those sessions over the course of the month of May. And folks, if they want to change their insurance or jump onto the insurance if they haven't been there previously, this is the time to do it, with an effective date of July 1st. And I think that's all I have.
All right, moving on to subcommittees and liaisons. We covered the finance meeting that we had yesterday. Any LPVEC information, Pam?
Let's see here. I'm trying to think. We had a meeting last. Oh yes, the last meeting that we had this last week, it was the annual meeting where all of the different committees for the different departments presents, and it was my first time being a part of that, because that annual meeting was canceled due to COVID last year. So basically, like, for those of you who don't know how this works, for all of the different shops that there are at LPVEC, they have committees that are made up of community members that represent those businesses. So for example, the culinary has members from different restaurants, and they meet several times a year to not only discuss the needs of what's going on in their areas, but also how they can best support the students at LPVEC. And then annually, once a year, they provide an update to the board with regard to what they're doing specifically with the CTEC students at LPVEC. So it was kind of cool. Every shop got 5 minutes to sort of present, and we got to hear about what they're doing to support our students, which was really, really neat. So hopefully next year this will be live and in person, but it was a cool introduction for me.
All right, policy, I believe you guys are meeting tomorrow?
Yes.
Buildings and grounds, I'm gonna have to schedule something with Steve. Month of May, we don't have anything on the books yet. John, anything for athletics?
No, I can't think of anything that's.
Okay. ILT, you guys met today. Any update?
Sure, I can take this. Basically, it was kind of a review of where we're going with regard to curriculum and curriculum changes. We talked about Hill for Literacy, which is a professional development partnership that the district is looking to create in order to help us implement our literacy initiatives for the next 3 to 5 years. We talked about Children Discovering Justice, which is the history and social science curriculum for the K-5 levels. And then also at the regional school and even at the younger levels, we talked about illustrative math, which is a pilot that has been going on at the middle school level. And we're looking to extend it down to the lower levels to see if that's the direction that we want to go with regard to our math programs. Then there was some discussion about the logistics of how we are going to be assessing our students' needs with regard to where we are with regard to learning loss, or as Jenny would say, unfinished learning, and where we need to go in the future. So if anybody else wants to kind of fill in the holes for me, that's what I got for you.
I wasn't there, but from my elementary math expertise, my jaw just dropped hearing about illustrative math. That's like the cream of the crop right now. So that would be exciting to check it out.
I can tell you that my own children are in 7th grade and that their teacher is using it. So my kids have been part of the pilot for the past year. So I know that pilot is being done at the middle school levels, and we're talking about now extending it down to K-5.
Okay.
That's correct, Pam. We were talking about it this morning in our admin meeting. And they are looking at it as well at the high school level, but there's also another program that Jenny is going to be meeting with them about too.
Thank you for the update on ILT. Any other liaison position that wishes to report out, please do so now.
I do know that Southwick 250 met last night, and it's kind of there's been a little bit of a loss of membership. There's been a loss of momentum, but I think that there is still going to be a fall parade. It just might not be as grandiose as it originally was planned. So I do know as the things kind of come or get revived, I guess I'll keep you posted in one way or another.
Okay, thank you for your update. All right, at this time, it's time for our second public comment. I'm going to ask Amy to check the superintendent account.
Chairman Houle, I have no public comments in the mailbox.
Moving on to committee discussion, two items. First of all, we're going to be moving our next meeting off a Tuesday night because of the annual town meeting to Monday night. And then secondly, you should have an email from Amy with an online survey to complete the superintendent evaluation. If you complete that by the date in the email, I'd appreciate it so that we can put together a report for the next meeting. Actually, I have one more thing for old business. We talked about doing in-person meetings. Amy and I went back and forth from our last meeting, and to broadcast the meeting still for folks at home, from a technology perspective, it's still problematic for us. So I've asked Superintendent Willard to get pricing for the superintendent's conference room to get it set up with microphones so that we can broadcast live and still do in-person meetings starting in September. So we'll get a quote together for that and see if it's reasonable and go from there. Any other old or new business for this evening?
I did have a question regarding our summer curriculum. Oh, now I already forget. Summer curriculum learning coordinator. Sorry. That job, I would assume, and I kind of figured it out as I was thinking about it, because the summer learning will happen so at the end of the summer, does that mean there will be ample time at the beginning of the summer for the coordinator to work, or will they be kind of trying to juggle two jobs if we're hiring in-house? That was my concern.
I can answer that. No, they won't be juggling 2 jobs. Most of their work that we're going to be doing is we're buying, and I can't think of what the name is right now. I wish Jenny was on here, but it is a science program, and that we're going to be having some ELA and math standards that are connected to that as extension activities for the students. So there's not a lot of work to get together. Most of it is going to be parent outreach, organization, and it'll probably be done in the early weeks of July.
Great.
So yeah, Chelsea, the name is escaping me as well, but it is not curriculum development. It is a canned program that we've used actually before in the past. It's a hands-on STEM program, but it's more like logistics work in terms of, you know, logistically, how are we going to make this operate with regard to, you know, weeks, sessions, contacting parents, that sort of thing.
So Camp Invention is the name of it.
There you go.
I remember hearing about it. All right. But I
need to thank Amy McLaughlin for coming up with that. I kept wanting to say Camp Intervention, and I know that wasn't the right thing. It's Camp Invention.
Sounds good.
Any other old or new business? All right, Superintendent Willow, do we need executive this evening, or are we all set?
We are all set, Chairman Hall.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I second.
Pam?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Ted?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Maria?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
And Jeff is a yes. Thank you folks for joining this evening. Happy Mother's Day to all your mothers. And good night.